I'm here with Chris Anderson, the head of TED, lead curator. So happy to be here with you, my friend.
Hi, Dan. Nice to be here.
So there's been over 100,000 TEDx and TED Talks since you've started. How do you keep the brand fresh?
It's a lot of talks. Most of those are from TEDx, which is the initiative where we let people around the world host their own events and they upload them to YouTube. That's probably where 95% of those are from. How do we keep the brand fresh? The world doesn't get any less interesting, right? Knowledge is not like ice cream. It's not like the more you have of it, the more sick you get of it, the more interesting it gets. So, I don't know, the more really interesting ideas that are out there, the more it makes you curious.
And what is your responsibility as someone who's curating different voices and ideas?
You have to find the ideas that matter. Our mission is ideas worth spreading. Ideas are really powerful things, and that can be powerful both ways. Like, bad ideas can be extremely destructive. So we take that responsibility seriously and try to find things that are based in truth and that are actually going to help people's lives. And that involves having a team of people who are just passionate about that mission, take it seriously.
How do you curate employees like you curate idea sharers?
I mean, we try and find the best people. We're based here in New York, which is an amazing place. You have so many people from different parts of the world, different viewpoints. The team that have come here are mostly people who they could work at a ton of other places, but they're inspired by the mission. They want to do something that's bigger than they are. They're excited at sharing ideas and tracking down the most interesting minds out there. So it feels like we get the pick of truly amazing people. I'm astonished by the team. Feel very grateful for them every day.
How have these ideas changed how you work and live?
Gosh, so many ways. Professionally, even like the biggest things that happen in TED's history, like the decision to give our talks away for free on the internet. I mean, that idea itself probably came from TED Talks, from people like Kevin Kelly and Clay Shirky and Howard Rheingold back in the early 2000s were talking about how the rules of business were changing because of the internet. And so we said, okay, well, let's try this then. So it was directly inspired by that. I mean, for me personally, and I think for a lot of people who listen to TED Talks, talks about happiness and how to lead your life in a way that will be more meaningful, more satisfying. Those are the biggest ones. The science of unhappiness is really unintuitive, and by changing what you know about how your brain works, you can make things feel a lot better.
How have you seen some of these ideas materialize in society?
That happens in lots of different ways. That there are policies and stuff that's put out there that eventually someone may pick up. But I think the most interesting way that change happens is that people who watch a lot of TED Talks shift from being spectators to being agents. Like, you make that mental shift of, the future's coming out there and I can't do anything about it, to the future hasn't yet been written. And I can see a lot of other people doing really interesting stuff to make a difference. I could play a part in that. That shift, I think, is incredibly healthy and really exciting.
You've been doing this for a long time, and you're waking up every morning, coming to this office, maybe traveling to a new place, New Delhi, all these places you're going to, which are really exciting, and you're involved in podcasting and all these mediums. What keeps you going? What keeps you really excited to continue to make ideas spread?
I mean, it's partly just hearing great stories pretty much every day from people who have been impacted in some way. I had an email yesterday from a guy in Las Vegas who's using TED Talks to share with inmates, preparing them for reintroduction back into the world. There was a story recently about one of our TED Prize winners who'd created this citizen science service to use space images to discover ancient artifacts. And she'd recruited a 90-year-old on the other side of the country who was using her technology to be a space archaeologist. I mean, there's just so many ways, big and small, in which people engage, and I love that.
What have you learned about yourself and the people you've interviewed through your new podcast? And how has that been different than the feeling that people get at an event or watching a video on YouTube or your website?
So the new podcast, the TED Interview, allows us to just go much deeper with the speaker. A TED Talk is typically 18 minutes or less, sometimes half that length. For the TED Interview, I get to sit down for an hour with them. And I mean, we're talking about amazing people, like some of the world's most interesting minds. So you know, an idea isn't a single thing that just lands neatly wrapped, right? It needs to be critiqued and explored and maybe shaped a little bit more. And so in an hour, you can just really find out much more about what the person's thinking and come away with deeper knowledge.
And what, through some of your interviews, what kind of knowledge have you picked up that you think really stood out?
Well, for example, with this guy, David Deutsch, right here, you know, his worldview is that knowledge itself is a force in the universe. He's a physicist who thinks that knowledge, not just gravity and light and so forth, that knowledge is a force that changes everything. And when you hear him explain that, like his history of the universe changes the moment that knowledge came into the universe. And I found that powerful, inspiring. It changes the status of who humans are. Like, we actually matter if you take that idea seriously.
Yeah, and obviously TED helps educate people. What do you think is the future of education in a world that's being democratized by technology?
Well, one of the key aspects of education that has to be dialed up is creativity. You know, we're probably entering a world where machines do a lot of the things that we used to do and do them more cheaply and more automatically. So what are humans for? It's a troubling question. One of the things that will probably always be needed is just human creativity. And the good news is that there is almost infinite possibility for humans to be creative in new ways. Whether it's in this world, whether it's in some virtual world that some other humans created. It's absolutely amazing what humans are capable of. And so I think schools, as is been stated very eloquently in the most watched TED Talk of all time by Sir Ken Robinson, you know, schools have to do a better job of nurturing kids to be creative, because that is our superpower.
Do you think in a world that's increasingly being automated and where there's going to be more robots in the future, that public speaking as an art and a soft skill is going to become more important?
Absolutely, I think so. You know, it taps into a very ancient biological force, public speaking. I think of hundreds of thousands of years where people gathered around campfires and learned to read each other and to be inspired by each other. When two people speak, when someone speaks and others listen, what's going on is that their minds are literally syncing up together. They can get excited about the same thing. They can dream about a future together that is different from the world that they're in, and then they can act and make it so. I mean, no other species can do this. It's amazing that it can happen, and I think it's going to be needed more than ever. I think the more that we live in this world of screens, the more we're going to crave actual human-to-human interaction, and that ancient biological moment can now scale, just like the Gutenberg press allowed written word to scale across the planet. Now, online video allows this ancient process to scale indefinitely. That's exciting and significant.
Trust in the media is at an all-time low. What can you, as a content producer, an aggregator, and curator, do in order to ensure that the content that's producing is trustworthy, and what can individuals do to create their own filters?
Yeah, this is a really important question. It's a tragedy of the modern internet that we've figured out too many ways to spark each other into getting angry with each other. A lot of that is happening in written forms, whether, you know, on different types of social media. Face-to-face communication or voice-to-voice communication actually operates differently, and I absolutely think that there is a better chance of people finding a connection, finding shared values, finding reasons why they actually don't have to get angry with each other. They can learn from each other. And so I think part of our main priority going forward is to encourage speakers to speak in a way where they can be heard across borders, whether those borders are geographic, race, gender, class, you name it, to speak so that they can be heard, and for people to listen so that they can understand and not just get angry. It's an incredibly important, and I think a lot hangs on whether we all can figure out a better way of doing this.
How can people get on your radar? For instance, Tristan Harris, who spoke at the TED annual conference, he was on 60 Minutes and he got a phone call. But what's the best way to get noticed by you? What gets you most excited?
I mean, we're looking for anyone who's thought of something that matters or is doing something that matters. I've got a team of specialist curators out there in different fields, science, business, technology, design, and so forth, looking for those people. So, I mean, you can certainly come on the website and apply to talk, and we do get a lot of those applications. Or just be out there. I mean, if you're getting noticed on social media or in the world generally, we will probably be hot on your tail to try and get you to come to TED.
I assume a lot of these talks keep you optimistic. Are you optimistic about future generations and the ideas that they're going to end up sharing on the TED stage eventually?
I'm broadly optimistic. I think there's plenty of reasons to be quite troubled as well. Like, the stakes are really high. I think we're doing some things really badly, and it's incredibly important that people wise up to it and try to address those things. But unquestionably, there's never been more potential for humanity. Some of the technologies that are being developed take your breath away, and they actually give humans much more potential. It's, people talk a lot about what we're going to be displaced by. There's so much that we can be empowered by and do things that we've never been able to do before. So, David Deutsch's definition of an optimist is not of someone who just feels hope blindly, come what may. It's of someone who sees that there are problems out there, but believes that problems are there to be solved and that humans are uniquely good at solving them by picturing a better way and then persuading others to help them reach that goal.
And I've asked this question to over 2,000 people over 12 years. What is your best piece of career advice?
Don't work for money. Work for something that's bigger than you are.
Love it. Hi, my friend.